special focus? Well, the need for self-regulation as far as news channels are concerned. Do we need to strengthen mechanisms of self-regulation? Well, the Supreme Court today has directed the News Broadcasters Association, or the NBA, to submit suggestions to strengthen self-regulatory mechanisms of the association, and has also observed that the 1 lakh rupee fine imposed by the association on news channels violating norms is ineffective and disproportionate to the profits they make. In fact, the Chief Justice himself said that how will news channels stop, violating these norms if just a fine as meager as 1 lakh rupees is imposed? Well, the Supreme Court has also asked the NBA to consult with retired Supreme Court Judge Justice Sikri, who is the chairperson, to, in a sense, work out these self-regulatory mechanisms and strengthen them as well. Well, joining me on Newsbreak tonight, I'm being joined by Sanjay Singh, senior journalist. Also with me, Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate of the Supreme Court. Ashutosh Srivastav, the Supreme Court advocate, is also with us. Going across to you first, Sanjay Singh, how do you look at the Supreme Court's remarks? Do you think, as a senior journalist yourself, that we need to strengthen self-regulatory mechanisms, given the fact that, as the Chief Justice also pointed out, that some news channels go absolutely berserk when it comes to reporting particularly certain stories which involve some element of sensationalism?
I think it was a very good judgment, very good directive. Not judgment as yet, but very good directive by the Supreme Court. We know that to get TRPs and in race of breaking news and at times to make news juicy, certain channels jump the gun and go for the breaking news. There are situations where some channels even claim that they broke news a minute or some seconds before another channel. And said that the self-regulatory mechanism that was evolved some years ago, obviously nobody wanted government's intervention, neither that is very desirable. And therefore it was it was thought that a self-regulatory mechanism by the bodies concerned, channels form their own body. There was some also mechanism involved into that. Former judges were appointed as chairperson of that particular committee. But then we have also instances that more such bodies came up, like as was referred in Supreme Court proceedings also, right. That when one particular channel was fined 1 lakh rupees, that particular channel left NBA and joined other kind of self-regulatory body. So there are situations. There are also situations when you break certain news and you say that we don't verify or authenticate this particular audio or this particular video, yet you play it, and after a while you withdraw that particular news item. But right. By then the damage is done, and therefore I think there is certain kind of thought and review go into it by the channels, by the body, and also further proceedings will be awaited.
That's an important point there, and Ashutosh Srivastav come in on this, because this is not the first time perhaps that the Supreme Court is pulling up news channels. Earlier also we saw the Supreme Court coming down heavily on news channels on hate speech, talking about how a certain degree of self-restraint needs to be exercised by news channels. How do you look at this directive by the Supreme Court? And the Supreme Court interestingly has also said that the punitive action also needs to be strengthened in a sense. This 1 lakh rupee fine is not enough.
First of all, Article 19 of the Constitution gives freedom of press, actually. Yeah. So the idea is that the press should not be unnecessarily restricted too far. And with that in mind, and with the Nariman recommendations, this NBSA was formed. So that there should be some self kind of restraint on the media itself, and they work and they maintain the standards in the country. And accordingly, the fine of 1 lakh was to be imposed if the standards are not met out, to be decided by the association. Now, if we consider today's this thing, it is not a judgment or anything. In fact, the appeal which was filed by the association, being aggrieved by the Bombay High Court, which said that 1 lakh fine is not sufficient and there has to be further restrictions. And against this order, the association moved to the Supreme Court. And now today, when the Supreme Court has already issued notice, that means the Supreme Court is willing to hear the appeal rather. So I would say, yes, there could be certain guidelines which can be issued in future, considering the affidavits which are going to be filed by the parties, and especially by the chairman, Justice Sikri, who himself is the chairman of the association. So we have to see how it
that you
goes
also
further.
brought up the issue of censorship, and Sanjay Hegde come in on this point, because how do we really draw the line between self-regulation and censorship when it comes to news? It's a thin line there, isn't it?
Well, I think the line is on. So you are asking Mr. Hegde.
I'll go across to you, Mr. Hegde first. Yeah.
See, the point is self-regulation in this industry has not worked.
Yes.
This was something which was pulled out on the fresh UPA government, which had just been come in by a major news channel, which also runs a huge news magazine, and one of its prominent anchors even today. Self-regulation was supposed to work in an era when hate speech and this constant cycle of violence being celebrated was not there on your media channels. I have also dealt with similar matters in the Supreme Court. It was my submission much earlier that this 1 lakh was just a flea bite.
Yes.
Anybody who profits from hate must be made to disgorge that. Your viewers must also be aware of the context in which this appeal was filed. This was that entire campaign with regard to the death of Sushant Singh Rajput. A whole section of the media was determined to say that it was not a suicide, and that certain people in the Maharashtra government were involved. And unfortunately, a lady got caught in the crossfire. She spent time in prison.
Right. And who is actually going to pay for it? Because as you were mentioning earlier as well, the damage is done. Right. And let me take this to Sanjay Singh.
Self-respect.
Yes.
Can 1 lakh bring back her self-respect?
That's
no.
Right. So let me take this to Sanjay Singh. Sanjay Singh, as a journalist yourself, these editorial guidelines of the NBA already exist. But at a time when we see that there's this constant need to, in a sense, pander to baser instincts or peddle hate, or as you said, as Mr. Hegde also pointed out, profit from hate, will these directives be of any use? Because we see media trials all the time. We see hate peddling on prime time almost every day. So at such a time, do you think that any of these directives or even strengthening self-regulatory mechanisms, will any of this be useful?
That is a very loaded question, and there can't be simple yes or no. But practically, self-regulation, when it comes to regulating yourself, obviously certain degree of leniency or certain degree of discretion is always there. And when that particular discretion is there, you work as per your own advantage. But there also, when you apply some kind of censorship, I think then there is a whole lot of noise emanating from various corners of society, various sections of society as to this is good, this is bad, actually bad only. But yes, there's some kind of regulation and some kind of mechanism has to evolve to say that it is not limited only to hate speech. A whole lot of fake news that are peddled on news channels and also on social media. Vedanta, there was time not very long ago when anything published in newspaper or anything said on television channels were taken as truth and only truth, and therefore you make your perception about certain people, certain incidents, and certain institutions.
Ashutosh Srivastava, let me go across to you. Let me go across to you and ask you, do you think we need, more sort of a radical evolution of bodies like the News Broadcasters Association? There needs to be some sort of rethink as far as these bodies are concerned, because many would say, including journalists, that these bodies are irrelevant.
See, first of all, I feel that the freedom of press is very, very important in any democratic system. If we put a lot of restrictions through authorities, or making so many rules and regulations, then the beauty of the democracy will be in question. And the representation of people which are being done by the media houses will be at stake. So my take here is that, yes, there should be control also. There should not be misconduct by the media. That is one part of it. But that doesn't mean that with one or two such kind of incidences or maybe such other many incidences, the freedom of media should be curbed down. Otherwise, it will be completely against the principles of our constitution.
That's an important point you're making, and let me get Sanjay Hegde on this, and I'm afraid I'm running completely out of time. Mr. Hegde, do you echo that sentiment of Ashutosh Srivastava that, you know, freedom of the press must really be the cornerstone as far as, you know, the self-regulation is concerned?
The press has no greater freedom than any ordinary citizen. There is no special freedom of the press in the Indian Constitution. If I say something which is a vicious lie, I can expect to go to jail in defamation or have a huge sum against me. Okay. Why should journalists who indulge in a continual campaign of calumny be protected, saying that we will regulate ourselves, and if anything goes wrong, after a long time, my channel will be asked to pay 1 lakh. Right. At the very least, the authority must have the powers to take anchors off air.
Right, that's a very important point you're making, that, you know, there has to be stringent action against hate peddling and those who are sort of encouraging this. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for joining us on this very important discussion. And well, but of course, very strong remarks by the Chief Justice of India while hearing this case.